What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move with excellence. And part two to my Vacaville experience. I'm getting this video out a little bit later than what I had expected. I'm going down a rabbit hole, right? Where I wasn't sure what the unit for the Ad Seg in Vacaville was called. Right? I don't remember. I was there 24 years ago, right? And and so I was like, oh, let me look and I have some old mail from writing, my mom and my sisters and stuff that they had saved. And a lot of that is also three-way correspondence, right? With writing other homeboys at other prisons or on other yards, and they were kind of my go-betweens. And so I looked through to find an envelope and I found it, right? I found a handful. And so Ad Seg is W Wing in Vacaville, where it was back then. But then I wind up catching, you know, uh, going down a little rabbit hole of memory lane with some of the letters from the homeboys, right? As we're writing, that were still over there at Salinas Valley, and I had even complained to them like, "Well, I'm trying to go home. Home meaning Salinas Valley." But anyway, so like I said, this is part two. Part one was like a year ago, right? So I will, I'll post a link to it here, but you don't need to watch part one first for part two to make sense. But if you want to, go for it. I also have a playlist. It's called like Me in Prison 96 to 2005, something like that. Because when I started my channel, I started off doing an overview of various prisons where I was, right? And those are my most watched videos by far, right? 150, 250,000 views for like Corcoran, Pelican Bay, San Quentin. And so I've done them for a couple different places. I got validated in 2000, and so I was never on a yard after that. So it's not as if I went to a bunch of different prisons. But I did part one for Vacaville, and I'm still not done with that because obviously I like to do other content that isn't about that. So this will wrap up that part. And part one was covers from me being in Salinas Valley, right, level 4 yard, and going to Vacaville for surgery. For those that don't know, I was diagnosed with a rare hereditary form of colon cancer while I was in prison. And so that's how I ended up at Vacaville. I went to Vacaville just to have the surgery. And as soon as the surgery was done, I was supposed to go back to Salinas Valley, right? So I didn't technically transfer over there. I was what's called a med in return. I didn't bring my property. I didn't none of that, So, anyways, I covered that in part one, and then the surgery and kind of how that went. Some of the things that had been happening at Vacaville during my time there, and where I leave off is sitting there being questioned by the goon squad, right? IGI or SSU, they have different initials for different statuses, but we just call them all the goon squad, the kukui, right? So I'm being questioned by them, and then they hand me 4 1030s, right? And say, you are validated. And I was like, man, what the fuck? And so that's where we'll pick this up. People, a lot of people ask about the validation process, and validation has changed. The labeling, everything has changed dramatically since then. Now there's security threat groups, and so everything's a lot different. So obviously I'm gonna talk about how it was, when I was in there, which was the way it had been for decades prior, and the way that it continued to be for several years after that, right? A lot of those other changes that came after I was already out of prison, and so to be validated, they needed three criteria, right? Criteria could be all kinds of stuff. It could be your name on a roster, right? It could be certain things that you did, right? If you got off on a yard and then they got information that was, a prison gang motivated hit, corresponding with people, right? Things as petty as a signature on a birthday card. A lot of times if it was a homeboy's birthday, whoever drew would strike up a nice card and then it'd be passed around and the homeboys would sign it and just like you do in kind of office spaces, right? Your coworkers all sign your birthday card. So I was, there. But those that stopped because there was a lot of people getting validated behind those cards. Because if somebody who signed it, even years later in a whole different prison, winds up getting validated as a member of this, Then they go search your cell and find it, and they're like, oh, you have communication with the member. And you would wind up getting validated a lot of times as an associate when it was stuff like that. But the number one thing that they used was confidential information, people that debriefed, right? People that dropped kites, but predominantly folks that debriefed. And I did a video like 2, 3 days ago about the debriefing process because a lot of folks had questions and what is it, what isn't it, this and that. I never went through that process, of course, but I did a video there which also explains kind of some of the validation. So I don't want to get too much into it. In this video, I kind of want to stick to, what it was like in Vacaville, right? Weirdest fucking place I've ever been for prison. So, but the gist of it is people drop out and they tell on you. They say, hey, this guy's a member of this, that guy's a member of that, and they're considered reliable because they're dropping out, they're debriefing, and they're identifying themselves as a member. So of those 4 1030s that they gave me, right, you need to have 3. They gave me 4, which that, again, wasn't unusual. I know guys that got validated with, dozens of 1030s. And so 3 of them said that, you've been identified as a member of the Northern Structure / Nuestra Raza prison gang. And this information was provided by a reliable informant, right? And then another one said that I had ordered another inmate to do something on behalf of, the Northern Structure, Nuestra Raza prison gang. So that was it. Now, I was pissed, right? I wasn't just pissed that I was validated, but the fact that I was being validated in Vacaville. And if you've done time in California, especially back then, you'll kind of understand what I'm saying, but I'll try to paint the picture for you. And this is in no way to try to toot my own horn or like I'm, I was somebody or anything like that. I don't do that. I don't believe that. So I don't come online and express myself that way. The reality, though, at the time was Salinas Valley was a rockin' prison, right? And people have heard about the Green Wall, right? The CO gang that started over there. They were very active at the time. It was a rockin' prison. There was a lot of politics. There was a lot of violence. A lot of people were picking up 8 years left and right. I was reminded even here. These guys both picked up 8 years. The 2, people I was reading old correspondence with. While over there at Salinas Valley, right? And the homeboy from Oakland was waiting to go to the Tehachapi shoot. So it just was a violent, dangerous prison. All prisons had a potential to be, violent, and there's dangerous people everywhere. But Salinas Valley was a hardcore joint. There's no other real way to cut it. Vacaville, on the other hand, was not. That was the opposite, right? It was unique, at least from my understanding and in my experience, because you had people there of all different point levels. So guys that would have been a level 4, guys that would have been a level 1, everywhere in between, but they were there because they had medical issues. And it wasn't strictly medical folks, right? There was a main line, I think they were level 2s, living in dorms and that kind of stuff. So not everybody went there because they had a medical issue, but most people, I think, or at least a good chunk of the folks did. And there wasn't hardcore politics being played over there. Some people would go to Vacaville and be able to hide out, right? It was it was a Disneyland type of joint, right? Before the whole Norway thing and everything else. There was an expression like, well, you can get a chrono for anything at Vacaville. And it really looked like it was true. I saw guys with chronos for remote controls for their TV. I had never seen that in prison. But they got a chrono. There were people that had chronos that they got a cup of ice with every drink that they got. Again, never saw that in prison. But if you could get the medical staff to sign off on it, you could get it. And so a lot of people didn't want to leave, right? I don't blame them. I wanted to leave because I was still very much committed to that lifestyle and that mindset, and I mean, to a degree, obviously I stayed committed till I came home, but I wanted to be where the action was. I wanted to be with, with the homeboys, right? And so that whole environment just was goofy to me and I didn't want to be a part of it. And during my time there, I was very careful to not get involved in, for the most part, to not get involved in stuff that they had going on there because I didn't want to get told on. I didn't want the headache, right? Like I said, I was writing folks in Salinas all the time, um, and I wanted to go back, and they didn't send me, right? I should have been sent back earlier, and then in hindsight, with me getting validated, then it made sense because to get validated, the goon squad at the prison that you're at looks over your C file. They see all the information, the little, 128 chronos, you were working out over here, you were doing this or whatever. And if they feel like they have enough to validate you as a member of or an associate of a prison gang, there's always been more than four. People talk about four. There was more than four back then. There's more than four now. But uh, then they send that in a packet to Sacramento, and then in Sacramento, the administrators for the Goon Squad, they look it over and either yes, you're validated, or no, you're not. And you will 99% of the time never know about any of this unless the result is you are validated. And then you find out when, like I was that day, you're sitting there and they hit you with these 1030s and let you know, hey, fool, you're validated. Right. And that was a big part of a lot of the legal arguments that people were making, right? Is the lack of due process, everything else. But that could all be, other videos in itself. But so now it makes sense though why when I'm saying, hey, I want to go back to Salinas, I'm done with my medical stuff. I got my staples out. I'm not on any kind of medical regimen that I couldn't do over there. Like, send me back. They wouldn't because they were waiting to get their packet back. So I go. They put me in this holding cage in this big hallway. I don't know. Maybe somebody will type it in the comments and let me know what they would call that hallway. I didn't make it around Vacaville a lot, because of the circumstances of me going down there. I wasn't like I didn't go to yard. I didn't go all around the prison. So I'm just in this cage, but there's this huge hallway with all these offices off of it, and everything up to that point had been doors, right? The cell I was in the medical area, just regular prison door. Even when they have me in the dorm, right? It's a door to the dorm in a more narrow hallway. And now this was gonna change, right? So I'm in the cage. They come and get me, sit there for hours, and they go pack up my stuff. I didn't really have anything because I didn't have my property. And they roll up my stuff and they take me to an elevator. And I hadn't been on an elevator before in prison, right? And this was the only time. They put me in an elevator and we go to W Wing, is what Ad Seg was called at the time. And over there, it's all bars, right? It's the old school. Vacaville was built, I think they said 55. So I hadn't been behind bars, the actual physical bars, since Quentin, and so that was different for sure. And the cells kind of reminded me of Quentin. I think they were probably a little bit bigger, but if so, not much, right? And Quentin cells are like, it's just the smallest space I've ever been in prison. And so you're in this cell. The difference is I didn't have a cellie, right? I think if I remember right, everybody in the hole was single cell. I don't think that was a 2-person cell, but I'm not 100% sure. But I didn't have a cellie. And so that made it a little bit easier. Quentin, the cells are super small, and most of the time you have a cellie. I always did, and that's just rough. But so I'm in the hole, right? And we have a yard over there, again, kind of similar to Quentin, which I talked about in an earlier video, where you go to a yard that's attached to where you're housed at, you know? So you don't have to travel somewhere. And that's normal for the hole, but that's how it was over there in in W wing as well. So I'm up there, I'm on like the second tier. And one of the coolest things about being in the hole in Vacaville, right? And again, never saw this, was canned goods. We could get canned goods still. Now, when I was in Solano, we were able to get canned goods in our packages and that kind of stuff. And this is back when you could just send a list to the streets and your people could go shopping and make the package. They wound up changing that later, but so you can get canned goods in your package. In Solano, you could buy canned goods on Canteen. Like, it was fine. Salinas Valley, no. Right? There was no, cans in Salinas Valley. In fact, the homeboy Chongo from SAC wound up catching a stabbing on our yard with the tuna can lid, right? That's what he picked up the 8 years for and went over to the 180 side. So we couldn't have cans, right, ever over there. So now here I am in the hole, not on the main line, definitely not in the hole. Now I'm in the hole, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you could have canned goods, if you get a package." And when you're in Ad Seg, you get one package a year, right? So I was due for a package, and so I told my people, I was like, "Man, shoot it," right? And the way it would work is you get your package. It's like 30 pounds, I think was the limit. And they come to your cell, right? They put on a little cart and just roll it down to your cell. There's like a station for the COs that are that's like in the middle, if I remember right. So if I'm in my cell and I'm, the bars in front of me, I'm looking out of the bars. Obviously, there's the tier, in front of me with, also with bars, and then that's it, right? There's nobody else housed over there. It's just a wall, right? Eventually, kind of like how Quentin and the Bay and that kind of stuff are. And so down the tier to my left, right, there's a like a little station where the CO sit. There's a desk in there, and whatever, a little office type thing. And I'm pretty sure then the tier also extends, past that, right? So he's kind of in the middle, but I could be wrong. I know that's where the stairs are, where you walk down the stairs to be able to go to yard. So you just holler down the tier, man, to the CO. Hey, can I get this? Can I get that? And they walk down when you first get your package. They put it on the cart. They roll it down there. They open up the package in front of you. They show you what you have. This is what you got: candy bars, zoom zooms, wham whams, jars of coffee, canned goods, tortillas. You can't get perishable stuff, of course. But so you get to see what you have, and you can get what you want right then. But you're limited on like having food and that kind of stuff in your cell, right? And your cell's just not that big, so they don't just give you the whole thing and you keep it in there. They keep it in that little office, right? So when you want something, right? If I want to take some of the stuff that we had for breakfast and I want to make a little burrito, I can just haul down a tier to the CO. Hey, let me get a pack of tortillas and let me get 2 cans of refried beans and a can of chilies and some of the, the squeezed cheese and a bag of hot water, right? And they'll put the stuff on a cart, roll it down to you, open up everything, and then put it inside little paper cups or plastic bags or whatever. But open it up, put it in there, give it to you. You get to make your food. It it was amazing, right? It was really. It sounds like a little thing, but that that was a trip, and I really understood why people would want to stay there. Like I said, there's a lot of perks, and even the COs from my experience there, from what I remember, for the most part, they were pretty cool. I mean, they're still COs, right? But they said I remember times sitting in the SHU or even other just main lines where you're on lockdown and trying to get a roll of toilet paper or something, and can wind up taking the whole day, right? They just ignore you. And yet here you could holler down and just get a little sip from your package, or you want to make a soup. There's really no hot water in the cells. It's like I said, it's an old joint. From what I remember, there's no air, right? There's no hot air, no cold air, just no air, period. Just an old rundown looking place. It's painted different inside the cell, like the paint kind of chips off and stuff. It's a different look, just all the way around. Um, but so you get out, hey man, can I get some hot water, right? Because you're gonna make a soup or something, and they'll bring it to you, for the most part, right? So that I appreciated. That was pretty cool. And maybe it's because it's a medical facility and they're used to just high maintenance people doing time there, right? Folks that are always asking for shit. I don't know. Maybe I was just fortunate in the little window of time that I was in the hole there that um, there was some decent COs working. But so that was cool. And you can get like if I had stuff in my package, um, I can get it and send it to another homeboy too, right? And hey man, can you get 3 Snicker bars out of my package and give them to sell, 207? And yeah, they go run it over there, right? So there's no obviously it's the whole, right? There's no real programming. You just go to yard. I don't remember, and maybe somebody let me know in the comments. I don't remember, but I think there was 2 yards out there. Solano, right? For like a point of reference. Solano was like that. When you go to the yard in Ad Seg, when you get walked out, it's all behind a cyclone fence, right? So you can see it's all the fence there, and you can either go to the yard on this side, or there was a little walk alone uh, track, so to speak, just a hallway, almost like same thing, wire, fence on both sides. But you get locked into there where you can't, you don't play nice with others, so you just stay right there. And then another yard on the side of that. And so I think Vacaville was set up the same way, but I could be wrong. Like I said, it's been a long time. But went out to the yard. Everything was cool over there. I talked in my first video about a stabbing that had happened actually it was a slicing. He didn't book him, but he wound up, cutting him up. Um, so that dude that had done that, the homeboy, he was in the hole, and and it was pretty low key. Like I said, I was writing the fellas and just, hey, we used to call her Vicky, right? Validation. We say Vicky. Just got hooked up with Vicky, and so it was a short time there, but I was just upset that again, I felt like, man, I'm getting validated in a Mickey Mouse ass joint. And when I wound up transferring to Salinas Valley, because normally if you're validated, you go to the Ad Seg at that prison, and then from there you go to the SHU program. That's it. Corcoran SHU, Tehachapi SHU, Pelican Bay SHU. A lot of times you'll end up at Pelican Bay eventually, even if you go to one of those other ones. But in my case, again, because I wasn't technically a resident of Vacaville, I was a resident of Salinas Valley. They had to send me back to Salinas Valley, and that's where I thought I had a window of time or a window of opportunity to somehow maybe make this validation go away, right? And looking at the stuff, I remember Castillo was doing a lot of legal work from Pelican Bay, right? He's a validated dude from Southern California, and he had been doing a lot of legal work up there. And so I was getting some of that stuff in, and 602ing my validation, of course, but none of it really mattered there because I just still had to go to Salinas. And when I went to Salinas, I'm sitting in R&R, and even they made fun of me, right? And they're like, man, you got validated at Vacaville? Like, what the hell? And I think he was a captain, somebody, right? So I just do all my time in Vacaville, in the hole there. I get the package, like I said, and small dingy cells. Homeboys were pretty cool. There wasn't a ton, right? There was a handful of us. I want to say 10 maybe. And still ran a tight program, not the tightest Ad Seg program that I've seen, to be honest, but tight enough. You go out there, bust down. Still had security when you first come in and all that stuff. But it wasn't it wasn't crazy. It was the whole. And so when I go, they sent me back to Salinas finally, and in R&R, it was like the captain, whoever was like, "Hey man, so you got validated in Vacaville?" And I was like, "I don't think it's legit because I should have never been there. They shouldn't have had the ability to validate me. I was medical in return, man. How that should be your guys' call, not their call." And I've been cool. Now, mind you, I'd been to the hole since I'd been in Salinas Valley, but I was programming just fine on the yard, and stuff was happening and all that. But that's normal. That was normal for the environment of Salinas Valley, right? And he goes, "I'll tell you what." He goes, "Man, I'm gonna put you back out on the yard, right? I'm gonna put you out on the yard. It's gonna be up to committee what they do, but for tonight, I'm not gonna honor this shit, man. I'm not gonna send you over there to Ad Seg. I'll put you on the yard." And it was dope. I got all my property, right? All my property had been sitting there bagged up. So first time I'd gotten that in a few months. I got all my property. They put me back out on the yard. Gave me a celly, right? A homeboy that had been on that yard when I was there. And I had lost touch with that yard while I was in Vacaville. I maintained touch with C facility, and I maintained touch with Ad Seg, which was in D facility at the time. But I had lost it with my own yard that I had left off of, right, which was A yard. And And now it's all changed, right? B yard is the solid yard, A yard is the SNY yard. At that time, B yard was a new flower yard. It was still general population, but it was a new flower yard, and A yard was a solid yard for us. And so then I found out why, right? And I'll save that. That'll be another video. I didn't wind up getting to hang out there. Kind of spoiler alert. When I went to committee, they were like, "You're validated. What the fuck, stupid?" And put me back in the hole. And even when they put me in the hole, it was they kept me separate. And so, anyways, that'll be a future video. But I wanted to wrap up this Vacaville story. It's the first time that an overview has been two part. If you guys have any other questions, of course, leave them in the comments, and some of the stuff I can go over more, of course. But I just want to give you guys an overview. In closing, man, Vacaville was crazy. You can get just about anything over there. That was Disneyland before Norway. But it also, shit could also get goofy over there too, and people wind up hurt. So help others move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. Help your community because they need you. And I'll catch you guys on the next one, man. Take care.